Pretty clean at first look. Some old mods, some mods still in there, but overall not too bad. No spiders or cobwebs or anything. You'll see why it's not in the head shell later on. Looking in the chassis, I can see there's been some work done. New axial caps, but the can caps have been left. Lots of poor work, poor soldering, odd lengths of wire. I'm gonna get this all cleaned up and looking much better. Here's the AC wiring. Huge globs of solder, but just barely hanging on there. That'll get redone nicely. There's the back side, which is the accessory outlet, which is where those wires attach to, which will get deleted. Then you've got this triode pentode switching mod, which will also get deleted per the owner's request to bring this back to stock, and those tubes will be happier. You'll be putting a lot of voltage on the screens when you switch to triode, and you can also see this hot glue mess of a bias pot. There's that switch and the plug for an old mod. Planning the recap here. Luckily I had a diagram of how I've done this before, unlabeled, but I figured it out. I installed 2 new terminal strips, which are the ones at the bottom, so I could get this done, replacing those can caps with a bunch of caps in series. Also getting out the bias caps and all the gunk around that bias circuit, including that pot with all the glue. Now I'm removing the old mod, the triode pentode switch, getting the screen grid resistors off. Those will be installed at the bottom of the new terminal strips. Usually, or at least in a lot of amps, they go from one pin to the other on the power tube sockets, but those are already used here. So we'll have a nice home on that terminal strip. New caps going in. There's 2 sets of caps in series. So 400 microfarad to 350 volt caps in series for 50 microfarads at 700 volts each for 2 filter stages. And the main B plus going to the output transformer, and then for the screens. And here's the recap. Not the prettiest thing in the world. My shoulders were killing me a little bit, so my wiring not as nice as I like, but it's very sturdy and it'll work nicely. Whoops, first time around I put one of the bias caps in backwards, so that'll get taken out and reversed. Got that bias cap flipped, as well as some new bypass caps on the first gain stage of each channel. Caps are overrated voltage wise, but they fit really nicely on the eyelet board. And I'm trying out a resistor for the bias. 2 in series now to try and get the bias right where it should be. I didn't really like the idea of a pot in this one, and the resistor will work great. And the last item of business with this guy is this missing ground on the jack. Without that, it won't shunt to ground when there's nothing plugged in, so you'll get a lot of noise. Took those jacks out and put the ground back, and all good to go. And here's why it's not in a head shell. There is no head shell, more of a head plank.